Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod with our Ohio State pregame show, sponsored by Fanduel Sportsbook, your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch. Whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line, you'll find all the odds you need on the Fanduel app. Download it today on your phone. You'll be happy you did. You can get started right away gambling on today or any other sports, whether it's college basketball or anything else. You can also be sure to go to our Slido app, which is for Fanduel Play of the Game at the Ohio State game, either during the game or at the conclusion when we're doing our live show. You can vote in and tell us who you think of the player of the game was for Michigan State. Again, you can find that at Slido, SLIDO.com, hashtag TFFINOTS. If you appreciate the content here, hit the like and subscribe button, hype the video on YouTube, smash the notification bell. And if you're listening on a podcast player, be sure to drop a 5-star written review, and share it with your friends. And also drop us a note during the live chat. Tell us where you're listening from. So Sunday will be Michigan State's second to last home game, which it's always kind of weird getting to the bottom of my ticket stack since I don't actually do I still appreciate the paper tickets. And they welcome in, we'll call them the enigmatic Ohio State Buckeyes. Although but mathematically limited from the Big Ten race, the Spartans still have a lot to play for, including but not limited to improving their seed line in the NCAA tournament. Right now, we just had Dom on last night, America's top bracketologist. He had Michigan State as a 4 seed. However, he thinks with a 5-0 finish, Michigan State can get as high as a 2. And even if they take care of their home games and drop their all the 3 road games, he thinks at worst they'll be a 5. So kind of good news for Spartan fans that there's a nice gap there and sort of good cushion. But of course, that means
where did he have Ohio State?
Not in. That was what I was just going to say. So. Okay. This means, of course, Michigan State has to take care of business on Sunday afternoon against the Buckeyes, and they'll have to, of course, take care of Rutgers in the final home game for senior night. And as I mentioned, the Buckeyes have been I will just call them enigmatic and a program and a team because for quite a while. I mean, it's surprising that they struggled as much as they did under Chris Holtmann, especially the defensive end where he was a good coach at Butler. And then it was more surprising they hired an unproven interim coach, Jake Diebler, without any coaching experience. And they've sort of continued to struggle and have been on the defensive end as well. And they just have a team that seems to win the games they're supposed to, occasionally drops one, does not really win games that they're not supposed to. And so they just kind of continue to sort of struggle. And their records just vex, pundits and people, especially with the level of talent they have. You expect them to have a little bit better results, and yet they tend not to. And as I was just saying, currently, Dom doesn't even have the Buckeyes as the last 4, or the last 4, really? Even the first 4 out. So they are not by the bubble, and this includes their win over Wisconsin. So
that's interesting because they're and Ken Pom is not the be all end all certainly, but they're 36th in Ken Pom. Now that normally has an impact on seed lines more
Correct.
than it does inclusion, and I would imagine that's what his take would be. Look, clearly their resume is not great. You could make an argument that their win over Wisconsin, which was decisive, but it was at home, is maybe their best win of the year, and that's not a massively great win.
It's a quad 2 win, and that's their problem.
Yeah,
they have no quad 1 wins. They're 0-8 quad 1, and his point was in the past is if you don't have early on the season, he had him the bubble because as you mentioned, the metrics, they were pretty good. However, they'd not had a signature win. They'd had no quad 1 wins despite many opportunities. But a lot of teams sitting in the bubble in January, all the opportunities to play quad 1 and get victories were not theirs. But eventually people are going to get at least one. And the opportunity, the chance of a team that sits in the bubble not having any quad 1 wins is almost 0. So you pretty much have to have 1 or 2 quality wins to have a chance to get in the field. And then metrics takes over as far as where you get seated.
Yeah. And that all makes sense. I mean, the one thing that I would say, and I'm just pulling this up right now, but I'm pretty sure it's the case. The season's not over. Now, no. Ohio State still has games, not only the road game at Michigan State, they got a road game at Iowa, which presumably is a quad 1 opportunity. Home game against Purdue, which is probably still a quad 1, even though it's at home.
Purdue's a quad 1A.
Okay. Penn State
so
away.
Was Iowa, actually.
And Indiana at home. So
Mhm.
they've got at least 3 opportunities, counting this upcoming game, for a signature win. And then they will have the Big Ten tournament, which we don't know what chances they're at there, but that could be meaningful for them. I know it's the birthday party sack race, but this is the one exception to that, where there might actually be something on the line. It's the Ohio State profile has been maddeningly consistent over the last 4 years.
Yes,
They do just enough things well to make you think, at least at different points in the season, yeah, that's a tournament team. And then they never get there. That's the last 2 years under Chris Holtmann and the first 2 years, counting this one, under Jake Diebler. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch what happens there if they don't get in.
Yeah.
Now, Ohio State is a lot like Michigan. It's a football school. They support basketball more than, say, a Penn State does, certainly.
Well, who doesn't?
But right. But you tend to get, if you're not embarrassing the university, which, Michigan's had problems with, but Ohio State really hasn't.
Right.
If you're not embarrassing the university, you're generally going to get a little bit of a leash. But I do wonder, the Diebler hire kind of came out of the blue to begin with. To refresh people's memory, he was an assistant under Chris Holtmann. When Chris Holtmann was fired a couple years ago, Diebler played out the string, actually had a decent close to the season.
Mm-hmm.
They won some games people didn't see coming, and they gave him the job. And that was despite the fact that there were other coaches. Reportedly, John Calipari was interested in the job. I don't know how factual that is, but it doesn't strike me as beyond the pale. Ohio State, if you're a good coach, it's actually a great place to be, because you have, generally speaking, NIL has changed the script a little bit, but generally speaking, you have the resources that are necessary to compete without the kind of pressure that comes with a lot of other similarly placed jobs.
Right.
So it can be a good place to coach. But they went with Diebler, which was very surprising. I remember there was talk about McDermott from Creighton,
right,
possibly coming, who had been considered a contender. Dusty May. Yeah, there were a lot of possibilities. They decided to stay in-house. And if they miss the tournament again this year, it becomes increasingly difficult, let's put it that way, to characterize the program as one that's heading in the right direction.
Yes.
Minimum, they're going to lose their best player this year.
Right.
Bruce Thornton is a senior. So that's at a minimum. He's done. Right. Hard to, and they've had a good recruiting year. They actually have a kid's name is Anthony Thompson. He's a guy Michigan State recruited a bit. Very highly regarded talent, top 20 player, even top 10 in a lot of people's eyes. So it's not as if you look at it and say, oh my God, how are they going to compete? They'll have talent if they can retain the younger guys they've got. They'll have decent talent, but frankly, that's been the story the last 4 years. Ohio State has not been devoid of talent. You could question some of the roster decisions. They've had some injury issues from time to time, but the bottom line is you should do better at Ohio State than Chris Holtmann and, so far, at least, Jake Diebler have done. That's a job you should be competitive in. Certainly, to go 4 straight years without making the NCAA tournament, which is what it would be if they fail this year.
Right.
That is inexcusable. So to me, it's hard to justify keeping him when he's 0 for 2, and there really aren't obvious signs that, well, this thing's trending in the right direction. It's going to get better soon. I don't know why you would necessarily believe that. I don't rule out that it would be possible for that to happen, but yeah, it's just hard. It's hard to understand what's going on down there.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, we were talking about Sturts leaving. Is that right? Shirts leave at St. Louis looking for a job in a high major.
Josh Shirts, yeah.
And Josh Shirts, yeah, there you go. And as far as the Big Ten, we're looking at pretty obvious choices would be Rutgers, which, is not really an ideal job. And then potentially Oregon, which again is, a job outside of the region he's from. Now, again, you're still in the Big Ten, but that's not the easiest of jobs maybe. And now you think, well, if Ohio State's got their idea, may have some plans. And I think also with the transfer portal and with the success of Cignetti, now you see the success from Dusty May. I think people are expecting a little bit more, just add water success to programs sometimes, and the tolerance, the patience might be a little bit less.
For sure.
Especially for a program, like you said, it looks like it's kind of spinning its wheels. It's not like Ohio State's a disaster, but they're also not really making any progress. They're sort of exactly where they were a few years ago, which is just outside, and which is the same reason they got rid of Chris Holtmann.
And remember that the last 2-3 years before that, when Chris Holtmann was there and was getting to the NCAA tournament, they weren't winning games when they got there, and they weren't having great regular seasons. I mean, you're really coming up. Then you go back before that, the end of Thad Matta's era. It's hard to believe because we had a long stretch of about, I'd say 14-ish years.
Sure.
Where Ohio State basketball was right there with Michigan State and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
The top of this conference, but you've got to go back at least a decade now to the last point Ohio State was truly a relevant program on the national stage. They've had very few, maybe a couple years where the COVID year was one where there was a point they were in the top 10 and were looking very good. And then they faded. Michigan State beat them in a big game for Michigan State. They faded, ended up 12-8 in the league, I think, and they didn't do anything in the tournament. There just has not been the kind of performance that there should be in that job, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that's a job that, look, I would say, and I don't think this is unfair at all, if I were evaluating the Ohio State job, I would say bare minimum, 8 out of every 10 years you're in the tournament.
Yeah, just making it. Yeah, that seems reasonable. With the resources you have.
I think it's very
recruiting territory, all that.
And maybe half of those years you're in the mix for something. You're in the mix for an upper finish in the Big Ten. You're in the mix to go on a run nationally in the tournament, get at least to the second weekend. Like 4 out of every 10 years. Yeah, that's very fair for what that job allows you to do. It hasn't happened. And you just got to wonder is if they don't pull off. And at this point, I would say it's less likely than likely that they get in. As I illustrated, there are opportunities left, but man, it's coming fast. And, it's worth mentioning their second leading scorer, John Mobley Jr., did some kind of fracture in his hand. He needed surgery. They're saying they think he'll be back before the end of the year, but I don't even know what that means. You have
it may not be end of year for them.
For a guard, especially. That's kind of tough.
Yeah. Boswell's back, right, for Illinois, and he was out fracturing his hand as well. So
right, but he sat out about a month. So
I don't remember when it happened.
This just
3 weeks or something.
Late last week. I could see maybe the Big Ten tournament, but by that point, the cake's baked, kind of.
Yeah, or NC tournament,
so
but
it makes it even tougher. It makes the job even tougher, I guess is my point, to what already looks like an uphill climb.
Yeah.
And if they don't get in, then you really do have to look at it and wonder. I mean, Ohio State should be able to be very competitive in terms of getting a higher level coach. either an elite mid-major guy. You mentioned one candidate, but there would likely be others, or perhaps even a high major coach who's looking to move for
Mick
whatever
Cronin.
reason. Well, that is his home state.
Yeah,
That is his home state.
Cincinnati,
You make an
right?
interesting point.
I don't think
Speaking to
yeah.
that real quick, I mean, and I am still on balance. I'm a fan of Mick Cronin's. I've said that on our post game. We had not heard the post game interviews when we did that show.
I guess you could summarize that for people who not. Basically, Mick Cronin was asked a question afterwards about the students started chanting Booker because they want Booker out there, I think, and not in a mocking way, but just sort of like, want Booker out there, and asked him what he thought. Some reporter asked him what he thought of that. And he said, I don't care. I don't think about it. It's not so many words, right? I don't care what Michigan State student section thinks.
That's a kind way of putting it.
Very kind way. And then he got
yes,
he was very, very upset because then the reporter sort of was explaining why he asked the question. And then he just got really even more upset and he was irritated and and then of course he throwing his player out of the gym for that foul on
that
Cooper.
One. Okay. I having had some time to think about it, I can understand people thinking that was a bit much. I do think, though, that it's a sign. I have a hard time getting too upset at Mick Cronin when I know that what he's doing is looking at something that to him, especially in the heat of the moment, without replays, etc., looks pretty bad. And it was a flagrant one. It wasn't nothing.
It was a hard
it was
foul.
It was a play that you should not make in that situation. Correct. Because the risk of an injury, look at the score, all the context matters. Not a good decision on the kid's part. Did Mick make it way too demonstrative? Did he? Yeah, you could make that argument, but I fundamentally don't have a massive problem with that. I do think, and far be it from me to go out on a limb to defend media, but I think the totality of the way he conducted that post game was not great.
Yeah,
not a great.
He was,
and most of the time I think I said it in our podcast, maybe even like, oh, he gets a lot of heat, but I have a hard time thinking of anything he said that I disagreed with fundamentally in these big media moments. Well, we found one now. I don't think that was right or fair. I understand, though, these people are human. It doesn't make it right. Mm-hmm. But he just got his ass kicked twice.
Yeah.
Space of like 4 days. He's not happy for a host of reasons. And somebody asking him about the reaction to Booker by the MSU student section, I get it. But you got to conduct yourself better than that, though.
Yeah.
I don't think, unlike I'm seeing in some quarters of the media, though, do I think it's a fireable offense? No.
No, I mean, we saw Jerome Tang get canned at Kansas State, and he kind of went off on his players.
That was an excuse.
Yes, that was an excuse for getting rid of a guy. Yes.
And it might be for UCLA. It might be for UCLA, too. I don't
absolutely
rule out. Yeah, I don't rule it out. They're struggling to get into the tournament as well.
Yep.
Where we're talking about Ohio State's issues, it's possible. And, the only problem with it is they just signed Mick to a 5-year extension. And the buyout, if they canned him this year, is massive. The funny part is I read a column today by a longtime columnist for the LA Times, Bill Plaschke, people who inexplicably subjected themselves to watching those talking head shows on ESPN over the years. I don't know why you would ever torture yourself that way, but if you did that, you might know who Bill Plaschke is because he was a regular guest on some of those shows. He had a column that basically said UCLA needs to do something about this. They need to do something about Mick Cronin. They need to at least reel him in, and maybe they need to fire him. But the funniest part to me was he was contrasting him with John Wooden. And on one level, absolutely. I mean, John Wooden was the ultimate winner. Now, as I'm going to get into in a second, there were a lot of reasons for that. But the basic tenor of it was John Wooden, the way he conducted himself was beyond reproach. And that's the standard at UCLA. And to let somebody just go parading around, behaving the way Mick Cronin is behaving is unacceptable. And Plaschke actually referred to the guy in the column as coach. That's how he referred to Wooden. Coach. Just coach, not even Coach Wooden. Coach. John Wooden's program, a lot of the success that it had, by all credible accounts, was due to bagmen, specifically one bagman. UCLA was playing that game for years and years and years. And it's well known. I mean, I remember, and here's another one. You can judge the credibility if you like. Bob Knight used to talk about it, how he didn't really have a great deal of respect on certain levels for John Wooden because essentially his teams were bought. So that was the part that I found hilarious is you're making, I get it. Mick Cronin's not doing himself any favors, but you're contrasting him with this guy you're putting up for beatification, and it was a scam. John Wooden convinced a lot of people that he was beyond reproach, but the way his program operated, let's put it this way, very good reasons to question it from what I've seen. Very good as to how honestly and with how much integrity they operated. So some of the stuff that's coming at Cronin is a little bit much to me. As I said, I don't think it's a fireable offense. If his AD feels like he needs to sit him down and rein some of the excesses in, okay, that's their business. And I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah.
But I still think Mick Cronin's a good guy. And I still think Mick Cronin is right about most of what he talks about, including his assessment of his own team after that game, by the way. That they don't play with toughness. They're not ready to compete at the top of a league like the Big Ten. He's right. Yeah. The fact that he says it rubs some people the wrong way. I don't know. I'd rather have somebody shooting straight. That's me.
Well, as I mentioned, Ohio State now is they're definitely fighting to get in the tournament. And as you mentioned, they actually have 3 straight quad 1A games, of course, at Michigan State. Then Indiana on the road, and then at home against who is it?
It's Iowa on the road.
At Iowa, and
Purdue at home,
and at home against Purdue. So those are the 3 1A. Then they have 2 quad 2s, both at Penn State and then Indiana at home. So they have plenty of opportunities to sort of make a splash, but it's going to take a good effort from it, which they have not really shown yet against really good competition.
Yeah,
so that's 0-8 right now. So there you go.
Right? There's still an opportunity. They're not dead yet. And that's the thing. They're 9-6 in the league. Normally, in a league as strong as the Big Ten, you would feel like, okay, 9-6 in the league, you should be in pretty good shape. But the 9s and the 6s matter,
right? Exactly.
And they just haven't had even one win, as you mentioned, to hang their hats on and say, "Hey, we proved we could beat a higher level team." And that's usually a prerequisite.
Yeah. I mean, their road wins in the Big Ten are at Northwestern, at Rutgers, and at Oregon, who, that's everybody gets those pretty much.
But even the home court, okay, you get a win over Wisconsin. But Wisconsin's they're in the tournament, but Wisconsin's profile is not great.
No, but they have had a couple big wins on the road at both the Illinois.
But that's true. But I'm just saying, you're right.
Well, that's why the
difference.
Yeah, that's the difference
between them and Ohio State. I'm just saying, though, even the value of that win for Ohio State, given that it came at home, is not what maybe you might think it is, because you've seen Wisconsin get those couple of impressive road wins. The rest of their resume has enough dings in it that where they sit overall is not great. I don't know where Dom had them. I would think they're no higher than a 7. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't recall. I could look, but yeah, they were
too many blowouts.
Yeah, he has them as a 7 right now with Kentucky.
Yeah,
Clemson,
makes sense.
Villanova. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, but you beat a 7 seed at home. That doesn't really move the needle for Ohio State. So, yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about specifically about the Buckeyes. And of course, the big thing, as you mentioned, Mobley out for probably the rest of
Yeah.
the regular season or pretty
It
close to
takes
it.
a tough situation and makes it worse.
Yeah. Right. The second leading scorer, averaging almost 15 points a game. So in offense, Ohio State's pretty good. They're 21st overall offensive efficiency, is better than Michigan State. They have really good shooting twos. They're 23rd in the country, and at the free throw line, they're 12th. 3-point shooting has been pretty good, almost 35% for the season. And as far as the amount of shots they take for 3 versus 2, they're 188th, so they're definitely a higher frequency than Michigan State, but not a huge difference. And they don't turn the ball over a ton, so they're inside the top 100. But their offensive foul rate is pretty low, 148th, so they don't get the line much despite shooting the free throws well. And then they don't get offensive rebounding very well. They're 111th offensive rebounding. And, it's one of those things where, again, they're pretty efficient, but there's certain things that if they did a little bit differently, they could really get that efficiency up a lot more.
If they were able to get to the line more with the way they shoot it, that would certainly help. They're not a disaster there, but number 148 doesn't mean you're maxing out the number 12 free throw percentage, the offensive rebounding is not great at 111th. There are teams in the league that are worse, but it's just not a strength. So their second chance opportunities are limited. But I do think their profile is an illustration of what I believe to be a fundamental truth. As long as you're not jacking threes at a crazy rate,
right?
If you shoot twos well, that alone, if you shoot them really well, and they do, that alone will leave you with a fairly efficient offense. It just will. And that's they're 21st overall. We're seeing a lot of these numbers that are in the hundreds. So you say, well, how are they 21st overall? Well, it's because they mostly take twos and they mostly convert them.
Yeah.
That is a fundamental truth for all the analytics, the rise of tossing up threes like they're going out of style. All that stuff's cute. It's all great. A fundamental truth is if you do the basics, and 2-point shooting is about as basic as it gets. If you do the basics well, you too can be a good team offensively.
And then let's talk about defense, which has been a problem for Ohio State at this point, is it 10 years? It's
most all of the Holtman era. And then the last 2 years. Yeah.
I feel like this first year or two, they were okay. And then after that, they were
bad fast.
Yeah. Yep. So they're 65th overall, which again is not disaster, but for the Big Ten, it's pretty poor. And then they're 198th in opponent 2-point shooting. So as good as they are shooting twos, they're that good at letting people hit their twos. They also are a really terrible defensive rebounding team, 208th. They foul at 154th, so they foul a decent amount on defense as well. They have pretty good 3-point defense at 35th, but that's the only thing they do well on defense.
Yeah. I think that, again, we come down to fundamental truths. If you don't defend twos well, it's going to be really, really hard to be a good defensive team.
Yeah.
Even more so if you also don't clean up missed shots well, you're going to have a hard time being a good defensive team. And that's what Ohio State's profile tells you. They don't stop opponents' 2-point success well, and even when they do get a miss, they don't rebound defensively. Hard to be good defensively overall if that's what you do as a team. Now, the 3-point defense has been good in terms of opponent percentage. It's a tick under 31%. So that's been good. And opponents do take more threes than average, slightly. It's not quite the level of what UCLA's profile was, if you remember our discussion in that game. Right. But they do get opponents taking a lot of threes. So relatively speaking. So that's helped a little bit. That's why, despite how awful they are guarding twos and rebounding, they're not a total disaster defensively. They're just bad. They're not horrendous. That's why. So that's one element that's been okay, that for whatever reasons, and some of that is certainly them, they do manage to get opponents to take shots from range, maybe a little more than they should.
And then finally, as far as tempo goes, they're 186 in average length of offensive possession. They're 222nd in overall tempo. So tend to be on the slower side, which I think, from at least going a lot of these reviews of teams, is kind of the trend in general vicinity where most Big Ten teams are.
I would describe them as average.
Yeah.
That offensive length of offensive possession number is thoroughly at the middle. They're average. They don't play super fast. They're not a slow it down team either. I just think going back to the defense for just a quick second here, I would say the same thing about Ohio State that I've said about Wisconsin, which is another team who offensively pretty decent at times, but defensively has really struggled. It's hard to be consistent if you don't defend. You can actually be consistent if your offense is spotty, if you defend.
Right.
And with rebounding, especially on the defensive end, being a subset of defense. Michigan State's an example. Michigan State's offense has been somewhat inconsistent. It's not a disaster, but it has not been great. Yet they've been a consistent team this year. Why? Because generally speaking, they'll guard you and they will rebound. Ohio State doesn't do that. And when you don't do that, same as Wisconsin, when you don't do those things, it's hard to know what you're going to get game in, game out, and be able to rely on a consistent performance level. That's just how it is.
All right. Well, one place that has consistent is the Fanduel. You can go there anytime and pick up some great odds at Fanduel. And of course, as always, my disclaimer is we do not have the line, although I would say we were dead on with the line for the UCLA game at 8.5 points. I think that and for this game, Bartovic has an 8.3 point edge for Michigan State. I'm guessing Ken Palm is usually not. I was going to say usually a bit more. So we'll say it's probably 8.5 again. Pretty similar to the Ohio State or the UCLA game. I mean, I kind of like Michigan State to cover that 8.5. I'm just
cover. Yes.
Just not comfortable with it.
I was very insistent about this going to the UCLA game. I am just as, if not more, insistent about it in this one. We'll hope I'm right. But yeah, Ohio State being what they are and down Mobley, I don't like the odds.
Do you like because my guess is the over-under will be based on the Ken Palm average points for Michigan State and Ohio State, which I'm guessing is
that would be 100
for UCLA.
That would be 145. No,
145.
150. Well, wait a minute. Let me look. Let me get this right.
Try to do some mathing here.
145. That's correct.
145. I mean, without Mobley, I think you probably like the under on this game too, don't you? It's hard to imagine Michigan State shooting the lights out again, but maybe they'll score more than 2.
Yeah, probably, but it's close.
Because, I mean, well, that's why they put the numbers there. They're usually close.
Yeah. Probably I would go under, but mostly because, as you're saying, it's hard to imagine. Even for as efficient as Ohio State is, they're playing a very good defensive team. So you would think, especially at home, Michigan State will make it tougher on them than their average game. And then at the other end, that's the only caveat I've got. Not that I expect MSU to go 14 for 27 from 3 again, but is it possible they'll be able to get out and transition more than they did against UCLA? Yes. Could they do much more damage on second chances? Yes. Could they be better shooting twos than they were against UCLA, where they were okay? They weren't great. Yes. So it's a close call, which, as you say, is the way it's supposed to be, right?
And then just to look briefly at Final Four odds, Michigan State right now is plus 1,300. So 13-1 odds making the Final Four. And they are behind Nebraska, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Oh, no, sorry. My mistake. St. John's, Louisville, Alabama, Gonzaga, Arkansas, Purdue, and
They're
Connecticut.
behind all those teams?
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
Purdue's a
it's not-
6.5-1. Arkansas's 8.5-1. Gonzaga's a 9.5. Michigan State's a 13-1.
St. John's should not be ahead of Michigan State. Louisville should not.
Well, they're tied. Actually, they're actually, and Louisville are both
Okay.
13-1. So actually,
Those are the
same as
two
Michigan
that
State.
you read off that leaped out to me. You can
Yeah.
make the case for Purdue, but God's honest truth right now, on a neutral floor, Michigan State looks better than Purdue does. I understand why it would look that way, but Michigan State is better than Purdue at the moment, objectively, on a neutral court.
Yeah, I think so
I
too.
believe that.
I
There's
think
Purdue's for a solid 3 weeks at least. Purdue's given you absolutely zero reason to believe in them, and they've been taking a lot of heat after that Michigan game. I saw what's his name, Titus, the Club Trillion kid who was a walk-on at Ohio State. Compare Purdue to a suburban AAU team that has great uniforms and the tearaway warm-ups, and they go out and they wax other suburban teams. When they have to play a team from the city, they get blown away. I think that's a little harsh, but I do understand what he's getting at.
They just, at least when I've watched them, and I didn't watch them play against Michigan, obviously, because I was on the road heading to the Breslin Center. They just kind of seem tired to me. And I don't know, that's just
I agree.
But I can't tell
I've
you more.
Seen it. Look, that's happened once or twice in Izzo's tenure. I thought the 2005-2006 team was very highly rated, coming off a Final Four, very highly rated. Paul Davis was back, Mo Ager, Shannon Brown, Drew Neitzel as a sophomore. You know, that was a team that really never felt like it clicked. And it looked to me like some of those guys, for whatever reason, just were kind of blah in terms of the way they were approaching their basketball. There were more complicated reasons in the 2010-2011 season, but again, somewhat similar. You got Kalen Lucas, you got Darrell Summer, you got a lot of guys back from back-to-back Final Four teams, and they barely, they had to fight to get into the tournament. So we've seen that a couple times. You automatically assume, and with good reason, that a team that's got a really good, accomplished veteran core is going to do the job, and to one degree or another. Most of the time that happens, but every once in a while you do see it like this. I'll say this: Foster Lawyer has
Fletcher.
Jesus,
put it all in the jar
every time. Fletcher Lawyer has had, I think, especially when you factor in expectations and the fact that he's a senior, he's had his worst year at Purdue.
Yeah.
Braden Smith in that Michigan game. Now give Michigan credit. They put Lendenborg on him, and he did a good job with all that length, making life tough on Braden Smith. But honestly, there is no question in my mind that Jeremy Fears is the best point guard in the Big Ten this year, hands down. I guess if you want to call Keaton Wagler a point guard, maybe, but as a pure point guard, Jeremy Fears has been the best. He's had a better year than Braden Smith, point blank.
Yeah,
Braden Smith was terrible in that game against Michigan. Terrible. The only reason that wasn't a 40-point blowout was TKR played very well. That was it. And he's had trouble this year at different
He's had a rough season for the most part, too.
He was good against Michigan, but that has not been the story of the season as a whole. So, yeah, it's been tough.
Well, we're not going to spend too much time talking about Purdue. We'll have an opportunity after this game because that's Michigan State's next opponent as they head into the state of Indiana. But let's talk about the snow melt, the rain that happened last night. I think we get some rain again tonight. It's spring-ish. I mean, with all the snow forecasted pretty soon. But you want to make sure those gutters are operating properly. Make sure they're draining properly. It's a good time to walk around your house. Make sure you don't have unusual puddles that are built up or something like that getting into your foundation, causing problems in your basement. crawl space, whatever it might be underneath your house. Contact the Brothers Just Gutters. They can take care of those things. They can make sure the water is carried safely away from your house into your neighbor's yard. Go to our support page at the Final Four, schedule.com/support. You can get a hold of Kurt or Greg, depending where you are in the state of Michigan. And as a bonus, as a listener of the show, you get 10% off your estimate just by mentioning Final Four when you get it. They correspond to the player that Michigan State keeps in the gutter, which I think will be fairly obvious after we go through the starting lineup. But we'll begin here with Bruce Thornton, 6'2", senior point guard. He is number 2 all-time scorer, or pretty close to becoming number 2 all-time scorer. Easy for me to say. In Ohio State history, he's averaging almost 20 points a season, shooting 55, 40, 83. Takes a lot of deep threes, but he can certainly penetrate as well. He averages about 5 free throw attempts a game, 4 assists to 1.3 turnovers. So he's been steady there. Almost 5.5 rebounds a game. And what is weird is, despite all these numbers, I don't want to say he's not a winner, but they just haven't won much with him. And I
think you can say that. That might strike some as unfair, but it comes with the territory of playing that position. It's just like people talk about quarterbacks in football, and they hang that on them. And rarely do they focus enough on, well, what do they have around them? Blah,
right,
blah.
Right.
But you know what? I would argue Bruce Thornton has had at least respectable talent around him. It's hard to pinpoint why, because I watch him. I don't think he plays selfishly generally.
Nope.
I think his shot selection, he shoots the three well, but only a third of his shots come from three. So it's not anywhere near excessive. He gets to the line. He penetrates. He makes the team. It seems like he makes the team better. He's not turnover prone. He's not a very good defensive player. That part's true. But there's so much to like about his game. And I've been a big proponent of Bruce Thornton over his career. But with this season, it just it's hard to get past the bottom line. And the bottom line is, if they don't make a run here late, he's 0 for 4 in his career.
That's crazy.
That does say something.
Yeah. No,
it does say something.
He wasn't point guard his freshman year, though, right? He was like backup point guard, I feel like. I don't remember who the main point guard was that year.
He emerged late, though.
Okay.
I think it was his freshman year, was it not, when they beat Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, he was really good in the Big Ten tournament.
Yes.
I feel like that's where he really emerged.
It is. That was his breakout. He had started to play better over the course of that season, though. He had a decent freshman year, but from sophomore year on, he's been outstanding. But I talk about this a lot. A great point guard is a force multiplier. They have ways of making everybody else around them better. Jeremy Fears is a force multiplier. Absolutely. I don't think, you can look at the assist numbers and say, well, they're decent. The scoring numbers, the efficiency, that's all great. I don't think there's evidence for the idea that Bruce Thornton makes his teammates substantially better.
Yeah.
And the why of that is going to eternally be a puzzle for me, because, again, sometimes it's obvious. You can look at a guy and say, well, he's out there playing for himself. I don't get that feeling generally with Bruce Thornton. He's not taking bad shots. He's not forcing things, but just somehow he has not been able to make everybody else around him better than they are. And that's part of the job description, like it or not.
Yeah, well, certainly once you hit junior, senior year as an upperclassman, you're expected to be at least an emotional leader. And that's the one thing I would say watching him play, not that he's emotionless, but that he does not seem to have,
I would say
he does not seem fiery.
Yeah, he's not. He's not. That's not, some guys, it's not their personality. And,
yeah, no, I get it.
There are different ways to skin a cat. You can do enough even without being an outwardly boisterous personality. Yeah. But when it's not working, then all of that becomes fair game, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, playing beside him at the other guard's position is Tayson Chapman now, who's replacing John Mobley, who's injured, obviously. 6'4" sophomore, averaging 4.3 points a game, plays about 11 minutes. Of course, that's going to go up since Mobley's out. He played 29 minutes against Wisconsin. He's shooting 52, 53, and 83. Obviously, that's limited volume because he's only averaging 4 points a game, but majority of his shots are behind the arc.
Yeah, and Chapman's had a little bit of a rough go. I believe, I didn't confirm this, I should have. He's a sophomore eligibility-wise, but I believe he redshirted his freshman year due to injury. He was a pretty highly regarded recruit, and I think he was in, if I remember correctly, he was in the same class as the next guy we'll talk about, Devin Royal. So his career has gotten off to a slow start, but this year is the first time that there's finally traction. Yeah, it's limited volume, but those shooting numbers are really good. And that was when they recruited him, he was supposed to be a jump shooting threat. So it feels like it's finally coming around for him. And maybe with Mobley out, the opportunity to play more minutes is really going to help put him on firmer footing going into next year.
Then we have Devin Royal, who you just mentioned, 6'6", 230-pound junior. He was heavily recruited by Michigan State back in the day, a few years ago. Yep. He's averaging 14 points a game. Leads the team in rebounds, 5.6 a game. He's shooting 49, 32, and 79. I mean, he was not a good shooter his first year. He's just been slowly just getting a little bit better. And now enough, at least with 32%, you have to guard him out there outside the arc.
I like Devin Royal. I mean, I can understand why Tom Izzo was very serious about him. Mm-hmm. You know, what's an interesting historical counterfactual to think about is if Michigan State had landed Devin Royal, and reportedly they were the second place finisher, which doesn't mean a hell of a lot in recruiting, but nevertheless, Michigan State was the other school that it came down to reportedly for him. If they had landed him, they don't end up with Cohen Carr.
I was going to say the no car. Who will be guarding him, of course?
That's an interesting one for MSU fans. Do you think MSU would have been better off? It's a tough call because Devin Royal's a very good player. He's a very different player than Cohen Carr, to be sure, but he's been very productive at Ohio State. If he ever managed to become like a mid to high 30s 3-point shooter, you could be seeing, not that they play exactly alike, but I think he could be something like a John Tanji type, where it's just you can't really guard him very well because if you extend out too far, he's got the ability to go past you. He's strong enough to finish plays around the basket, and if he could hit threes, he's dangerous out there if you let him stay open. But the 3-point shooting hasn't quite gotten to that level, which has capped him thus far, at least, to the good category instead of great. But he's a very competitive guy. He's strong. He's tough, smart. I like him a lot. Always have.
I know who I'd rather watch play, and that'd be Cohen Carr.
Well, sure.
From the standpoint. Yeah, right.
And I think Cohen Carr is a better defender.
Okay.
That's true. But then you go back to, well, would Devin Royal have gotten better defensively at a place that would have demanded it of him? Maybe.
Yeah. All right. So then we have Amari Bynum, 6'8", 240-pound freshman, averaging 9.6 points a game, 4.7 rebounds a game, shooting 50, 31, and 73. And so he does a decent amount of his attempts are outside the 3-point line too, but not a majority, I don't think.
This is another guy, and that's the thing. To go back to the Thornton thing, we're going through these guys, and all these guys are players that, well, the last three at least we've talked about, they're players that to varying degrees I like.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, how is this team not better? Bynum, for a freshman, I think has played very well. Now, he's not at the superstar level that, we've seen many freshmen this year nationally achieve. He's more, I would put him more where, and this reflects where he was rated, he's more like the Jordan Scott, Cam Ward category, where he's done a lot of good things, but you see obviously the potential for him to be much, much more than that in the near future. And I do think that's the case with Bynum. He's got good size. He's decently strong with potential to get stronger. And yet he's athletic too. And he's got decent skill set. So I like him. I think he's going to be a very good player down the line. even as it is, his athletic ability and the skills that he already has to the degree they've developed have been enough to make him reasonably productive. But I think he's going to be much more than this down the line.
All right, then finally at the 5, we've got Christoph Tilley. He's a 7-footer, 240-pounder from transfer from Santa Clara. He's averaging 11.4 points a game, 4.7 rebounds a game, shooting 46, 24, and 76. And most of the shots, of course, are inside the arc. And, Santa Clara is also another team that's actually probably in a better position to get in the tournament than Ohio State right now.
Yeah. I'll say this, Ohio State went a different direction this year in the portal than last year. If you remember last year, they brought in Sean Stewart, who had been at Duke. He's now at Oregon. And Aaron Bradshaw, who had been at Kentucky. High-profile guys, McDonald's All-Americans, did not work for Ohio State. Didn't work well at all. This year, they went a little different direction, and it's been better than it was a year ago. It just hasn't been good enough. Tilley's a decently skilled big man offensively, so he can finish plays inside. Not a great shooter, obviously, but at least he knows that. He doesn't take a crazy amount of them. The problem is he's not strong enough, physical enough to really give Ohio State the interior play on the defensive end that they need. And that's been a real hole. That's a problem they've had for a while now that they still haven't solved. And Tilley, for as much as he's contributed positively, hasn't solved that.
All right, well, we can move on to reserves now. We'll begin with Puff Johnson, again, one of the better names in the Big Ten. He was previously at North Carolina, also Penn State, 6'8" senior. He's averaging 3.2 points a game, 1.2 rebounds a game, shooting 55, 75, 57. And I will admit, I wasn't aware of his eligibility issues that have sort of been worked out. So now he can play a little bit more.
Well, he can play at all. Yeah. It's also worth, before we leave, Ohio State had, I think this is one of those eligibility decisions that didn't get as much attention as some of the higher profile ones, where you had guys who had played professionally.
Right. Because you don't care about this guy.
But it was another one where it's like, come on. This guy's played, I believe he's played 5 years. This is his 6th year of eligibility. It just, he helps them when he's able to, he shot extremely well thus far, which is very limited volume because he just hasn't played many games.
Right.
That was the knock on him. Puff Johnson's problem at North Carolina and Penn State is he was a guy who was reputedly a good shooter with size, but he never managed to shoot the ball all that well. Well, so far at Ohio State, he's done that, but, it's pretty marginal thus far because he hasn't played that much. I guess a nice addition for them, but I don't know. Not impressed all the way around with that.
Next is a big man reserve, 7'2", 260-pound sophomore, Ivan Jagovian. He's averaging 3 points a game, 3.4 rebounds a game, plays about 11 minutes. He's shooting 55-50. Of course, it's just 1 for 2 for the season, and 64% at the line.
Yeah. They needed help inside. They had another transfer, a kid from Wright State named Brandon Noel they were counting on, who's been banged up. He hadn't played since January 5th. So that necessitated this guy playing a little bit more significant of a role. And I think, anytime you're talking about a team that lacks a lot of quality size, 7'2", 260 helps, but he's not very mobile. He's still, I would say overall, it's fair to describe him as still adjusting to the Big Ten level. Mm-hmm. And so the contributions have been muted, but we're going to see him in this game for sure because they have no choice.
Right. Then we've got Colin White. He's a 6'6" sophomore, averaging a little under a point a game, 1 rebound a game, plays about 8 minutes, shooting 38-0 and 33 on the season.
Now that 0 is 0
That's
for
with
14.
That's some volume, right? For this.
Yeah. Colin White last year as a freshman, kind of a scrappy guy. And I thought, well, maybe this is somebody who's got a future. Hasn't been as good a year as they might have hoped. And so his minutes have reflected that. He's only playing 8 minutes a game. I think coming into the season, they might have expected that would be a little more. But again, because of the injury problems, you might see him a little bit more in this game out of necessity. But it hasn't been a good year for him.
And finally, we have Gabe Cupps, who very careful listeners would recognize the name coming from. He used to play for Indiana last year. 6'2" sophomore, 1.7 points a game, 1.3 assists per game, about a turnover a game. Plays about 13 minutes, so backup point guard position, obviously. Shooting 35, 21, and 83.
Yeah, it's we often talk about projectability being tough with big men, and it is. But I'll tell you another type of player that's really hard to project. The smaller, less athletic but skilled point guard. We saw it at Michigan State with, and I'm going to get it right this time, Foster Lawyer. Would have been something if I would have called him Fletcher, huh?
That'd be a $5 bill, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. He had a couple of moments over the course of his career at Michigan State where it went very well for him. But overall, I'll be honest, I expected it to translate much better than it did for him at the Big Ten level, because he had one of the all-time great high school careers in Michigan history. You look at somebody like Braden Smith, not highly ranked. Nobody saw coming what his career has been, regardless of his senior year, which is still pretty good, just not what people expected, I think. That was obviously a huge success story the other direction. Cupps was a guy who had a really good high school career in Ohio, but there were limitations. 6'2", and that might be generous.
Right.
The listing. Not a particularly athletic guy. Another example, the other direction, Drew Neitzel. I remember a coach as smart and as good as Gary Williams reportedly said after seeing him his freshman year, saying to Tom Izzo, "This is what happens when you recruit a JV point guard." Well, that JV point guard had a tremendous career at Michigan State, right?
Yeah.
So you just can't always tell. These kind of guys, sometimes it works. There's something about it. I'll give you another example that worked well. Spike Albrecht.
Right. Yeah, Michigan, yeah.
Now, he was an all-time horrendous defensive player. But Spike Albrecht made positive contributions to Michigan basketball during his time there, no question.
Yep.
And totally unathletic, about 6 foot tall. You just never know. Sometimes these guys have something about their game. It can be that the shot release is quick enough, that they can get it off, that their understanding of the game, their basketball IQ is so high that it makes up for the physical deficits.
Right.
And sometimes that doesn't work. And you can't always tell when these guys are playing in high school as to which is going to be which. I believe that. So Cupps is a guy where it hasn't happened for him thus far. Didn't work at Indiana. And he played a lot because they had injury problems when he was a freshman. He had to play, and he wasn't productive. Hasn't worked at Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's down Mobley. If Cupps were playing well, there'd be a role for him.
Exactly.
He does play 13 minutes a game because they need somebody to provide those minutes. And now I think especially that's the case because Mobley could play the point when Thornton sits, which isn't often. But when Thornton needs rest, Mobley could do that. Now it's probably got to be Cupps. But it just hasn't worked. And I don't know that it will.
Well, I mean, you see that at every level of basketball, right? You have someone who's makes it in high school and they just can't make it college. College can't make the pros. You sort of max out at some point, which is, that's just natural human sort of thing.
Projection is an art, not a science. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of times where it looks, you got two guys that seem to have a very similar profile, and one makes it, one doesn't.
Yeah. A lot of things that you cannot possibly take account for. How much time someone spends at the gym, studying film,
Yeah,
et
all
cetera, et
that.
cetera, et cetera.
True.
All that stuff goes
Absolutely.
into two, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, guys like Braden Smith or Drew Neitzel were gym rats, but I don't know that Foster Lawyer wasn't.
No, but
You
yeah,
know, you just
absolutely.
don't know.
Yep. All right. So I think it's pretty clear, but who do you have as a player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter this game?
It's Bruce Thornton.
Bruce Thornton, yes,
Not
of
a
course.
close call.
Yeah, the point guard. All right. So that brings us to our least favorite competition of our show, which is who cleans the glass best, brought to you by the Squeegee Squad Grand Rapids. Now, those guys do great, and they actually kind of make the competition feel bad because they do such a good job. They get the ladders, of course, so you don't have to. They'll take care of the inside, the outside, your windows, whatever the window is. Doesn't matter.
So would you say they're the rod of cleaning?
Yeah, now you're talking big. They
my axling in it.
Yeah, I think. I guess if you're doing this like 2 months ago, right, then I'd have to have a sit down, talk to you about it, and say it's not really who Rod is. He's not really the kind of guy who talks like that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even use that language.
Except just now. Yeah, so contact the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Even if you're not in Grand Rapids, if you're anywhere in the area, they can take care of you. Whether it's your home or your business, whatever it might be, they can take care of the state capitol. If it's got glass, they can take care of it. If it's got siding, they can take care of it. They'll come out and power wash. I'm guessing right now, this is probably a good time to have them come out because my guess is your house is pretty dirty if it's like mine. So have them come out. The great thing about it is, a listener to the show, you get 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate from Troy and his team at the Final Four. It's on the schedule.com/support. You can find the link there. Contact Troy today. Get that on your schedule. And if you're a business for, my goodness, you have to have your windows cleaned. You cannot have a shabby looking business. So make sure you at least get on the schedule for twice a year. All right. So right now it's 13-10. We got 5 games to go. I was up 10-8 once. It's hard to believe. And I was looking pretty good with like 9 or 10 games ago. And it is just, or 12 games ago. And it is just falling apart now. I almost had your last game, but didn't. I do get to pick first. So naturally Kohler will not have a good game. So I'll have to go with Kohler, and I'll give you Cooper and whoever else you want.
For some reason, I just had this feeling that you were going to defy convention and go with Carson Cooper. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but that didn't happen. I will take Carson Cooper gladly, and I'm going to go with Cohen Carr. He only had 3 boards in the last game. Something tells me he's doing. But I debated it. It wasn't an easy call, but I'll go with Carson and Cohen.
Well, I'll go with Ward, and hopefully he picks up like 4 or 5. And I'm kind of almost in must-win territory right now. I mean, I've got it, especially like a Kohler. I have got to win. I've got to steal one at some point.
So you're the Ohio State of this.
I'm the Ohio. I'm outside the bubble right now. It's an opportunity to come back, and I'm staring at that basketball over there, and that's going to be in my head here if things don't go well. So I got to get this to work out. I'd much rather have you buy some helium. Maybe if I'm lucky, I can force a draw.
You got to, but you've got to sweep, really, because a worst case scenario, if I win one of the last 5, we're tied, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got Kohler 3 times, so I need all 3 of those wins, and then I need to steal one.
Really have got to run the table. But it is close. What was the gap? Wasn't the gap last year like 7 or something? I mean, it was
not close. It was like 5 or 6.
So this has been more competitive.
It has been, but it has the potential to not be competitive at the end too. And again, it's not like I feel like we're picking that differently. It's just, the way
some of us have the knack.
All right. Well, you know who does have the knack? That's Nudge Printing. Those guys will get, they Gabe and his crew. They are in Portland, Michigan. They put out great apparel. They are featuring the Kohler, Primal Scream, we'll call it. That is on t-shirts. You can head on over to nudgeprinting.com and get that. You can see it's on your screen right now. They, of course, feature the 5 keys to the game. brought to you by Nudge Printing. Head over to nudgeprinting.com/win. There, listeners of this show, or I guess your friends, if you bring them over, they'll have the opportunity to go sign up on that page, and you will be entered in a drawing to win a quarter zip, the Sparty basketball, which would be really sweet to wear as Final Four time and Big Ten tournament time comes up. It's a $120 value. It's a Travis Matthew. They're like super kind of luxurious quarter zips. So, I mean, you have nothing to lose by entering. So do that today. I'd be very glad you did. And while you're there, you can certainly pick up anything else you want on the Nudge collection. You get 20% off if you just simply type in TIFNOTS. That's TFFINOTS at checkout. And so again, that's all at nudgeprinting.com. All right, 5 keys to the game. This key, I think, has been in maybe every game. It's boards. And so this is, as mentioned before, Ohio State, very bad offensive rebounding team and poor on the defensive end. Michigan State did not, and which is kind of similar profile to UCLA, although UCLA, I guess, was a good defensive rebounding team. But Michigan State has got to do something here. They got away with it. They can sort of cover up the warts with 3-point shooting last game, but, can't do it every game.
In fairness, as you pointed out, MSU's offensive rebounding rate was great in the first half where they won the game. The second half, it kind of came back to earth and ended up being substandard. But the fact is, it's 2 straight games, the UCLA and before that the Wisconsin loss, where Michigan State has not rebounded anywhere near program levels.
Right.
On the offensive end, for sure. In the last game, defensive end was the problem against Wisconsin. They need to get back to business, and they come into this one on paper with a substantial advantage over Ohio State on the glass. They need to make that actual.
And the second key to the game is Thornton, the man himself, from who is the guy who makes things go, especially with Mobley out.
Yeah, no question. And look, I know we kind of dinged him a little bit in our discussion about him earlier, but the fact is he's an extremely dangerous player everywhere on the floor. I would say especially when he's getting into the lane, getting to the rim. He's a very good finisher, floaters in the lane. He's very good at finishing those plays. He's incredibly strong. So that helps him in traffic as well. And it can also cause the defense to collapse and create better opportunities for teammates. So you start with the fact that this is another high-level matchup for Jeremy Fears. He's been pretty good in those thus far. When he's been faced with somebody that is always considered to be a peer or a near peer, he's generally played very, very well when you look back at the course of this season. This is another one of those. So it starts with him. But as with anybody who's prone to penetrating, help defense is going to matter as well. So the bigs are going to have to be good in pick and roll action. Guys are going to have to be playing the gaps effectively. And that's going to be just as important in limiting what Thornton does. And the goal here, again, you're not going to shut Thornton down completely, most likely. The goal is you want to make him less efficient because he's been a very efficient player.
Yeah, and I feel like with Jeremy Fears being so important now to this team, I mean, he's always been important, but even more so, you cannot afford having him in foul trouble. And so,
yeah, that goes
I
without
wonder,
saying in every
on
game,
some level, he can't be quite as effective defensively because he's got to be just a little bit more careful, certainly early in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, but I will also say this, and I'm knocking on wood as I say it so we don't put the whammy on him. Jeremy Fears, for a guy who is as active and involved, let's say, as he is, there have not been many instances this year where he's been in foul trouble.
No, maybe
it's been extremely rare. And when you think about a guy who plays as well defensively as he does, that's saying something.
All right. And so the third key of the game is a transition game. This is one where, it's an opportunity for Michigan State to score easy twos against a team that's not good against twos. And Ohio State doesn't take tons of threes. And so the opportunities to run off misses might be a little bit less than like an Illinois, but certainly something that Michigan State needs to try and take advantage of.
Yeah. And the Wisconsin game, the one positive in that one was MSU got a lot done in transition. And again, that's a team that takes a lot of threes, although God knows they weren't missing many of them.
No,
so I don't know how much that helped, but I would just say this Ohio State team has just been so lax defensively in so many ways that I don't rule out that MSU could see opportunities. That was one thing UCLA did well. They didn't give I think Michigan State only ended up with 10 fast break points.
And almost all the first half, I think. It was so weird.
But I think there may be more opportunities here in this one. And we talked about Ohio State being kind of a middling paced team, but I think this is one where it's to Michigan State's advantage if they can get the tempo ramped up a little bit, because that Ohio State bench now is pretty thin.
Yeah.
I mean, at a minimum, if it means you're getting more minutes from guys like Cup and White than they would want to play normally, that's a positive for Michigan State. And getting into a fast-paced game is one way you can help make that happen.
So the fourth key to the game is attack. And this, of course, is Michigan State needs for one thing, they need to try and keep working on making their offense a little bit better, more efficient with their 2-point attack, but also Ohio State, not good against twos.
Yeah, it's simple fact. They're a very poor team defending twos. MSU needs to be better than it's been lately in terms of getting the ball to the rim and into the paint. And of course, that always starts with Jeremy. And we have talked about the fact that the last couple of games, I think he's been on balance a little passive.
Yep.
As compared to what he's done the bulk of the season. So he needs to be in attack mode because it all starts with him. But it also means your bigs have to finish the opportunities they get around the rim. This is not a team with a lot of length, not a team that blocks a lot of shots. You should be able to finish plays. You've got to do a better job than they've been doing lately in terms of converting offensive rebounds into points. That's also a way you do it. And then, of course, as we already talked about, transition. All of those things matter. The other thing is that besides the fact that Ohio State doesn't guard against twos well, they also aren't able to avoid fouling all that well. And so if you are aggressive and you are having an attacking mindset, you're hopefully going to get them into some foul trouble, which again could play out with reserves having to play more minutes than Diebler would want.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You'd like to see not only Jeremy, but also continue to attacking mindset from Cohen Carr.
Yep.
For that.
You just don't want to settle.
Yep.
You don't want to settle.
And so the fifth and final key to the game is interior defense. As we mentioned before, one of the strengths of Ohio State's offense is their 2-point attack. And so, and then also, of course, the help defense and stopping people from getting all the way to the rim would be helpful too for Michigan State.
And then, the other part of that, all that's true. And the other part of it is, your bigs got to play big, play tall without fouling, do all of those things well. That'll be a challenge because Michigan State's defense against twos has been very good generally. I got to check to see where they are nationally right now. 24th against, I think, the 23rd ranked 2-point shooting team. That's a hell of a matchup.
Yeah.
Pretty much on par with each other. But that's the thing. It's so important to what Ohio State does that if you can successfully make them less efficient than they normally are, that's a huge leg up. Huge.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show, except a couple quick questions. So, we mentioned the start, I think, again, similar to the UCLA game, that really helped them a ton, just getting out to a nice start against UCLA.
Yeah.
You'd really like to see that again here against Ohio State.
Agreed.
And to try and get some sort of pattern of starting games well versus just like a one-off. I think that'd be super helpful to finish this homestand.
Could have very easily been another key. Yeah. I do think that's true. You want to get the crowd engaged and keep them there. You're looking right now, as we've talked about a couple of times, you want to continue to build positive momentum from this point forward, because that's the only goal you really got in front of you, is to be as good as you can be for March. And so they played a pretty good game against UCLA. We talked about, I think, deep shooting maybe covered up some warts, but still, overall, very good result. You want to continue that.
And then the last thing I just want to get your opinion on is on Jeremy Fears. the talk about the whole dirty play, all that sort of thing, is it my imagination, or has sort of just ever moved on and now that's gone, aside from, the Michigan fans who are going to be talking about it for obvious reasons. But it seems like that's kind of like not even something you think people are talking about or thinking about at this point.
Well, I'm sorry. What are they? I
Just
lost.
the characterization of Jeremy as a dirty player. He's always
That
trying
are
to
they
trick people and do
past
it.
it? You mean?
Yeah, like just people
Well,
aren't like focusing on it anymore. I don't see. I'm
there's
like,
not, there wasn't any talk about it on the broadcast Tuesday
right.
or
Okay.
yeah, Tuesday night. Yeah, that's true. That really didn't. I don't recall it being mentioned. Um, but you mentioned something to me after the game. I don't think we talked about on the post game, but you mentioned it. Uh, and you would be in a better position to see it because the cameras don't always capture a lot of what Jeremy does
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of
I know what you're saying.
talking,
Yeah. Hmm.
being demonstrative with the crowd, all of those things. And you said to me that you noticed that it looked like he was a little bit more subdued than he's been prior to this.
Yeah. No, I
And
don't think
again,
there's any question.
I can't question that because the camera's not always,
Right.
it's stuff that maybe you see when somebody else at the free throw line. So Jeremy's a half court. I'm not seeing him.
Right.
You know,
Well, and this is like when we interviewed Robbie Hummel and he said he was calling the Olympics from Connecticut.
right?
It was harder for him because he can only see what the
Yep.
cameras are showing. There might be three cameras, but he's
You
like,
don't
can't see
get
the
the same
bench, you can't see
take
the
on body
reaction.
language, and yeah,
Exactly.
all true.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question. And I, I felt like that was definitely the case, that he's um, just maybe reined it in a little bit, sort of the. But I would say I say that, and yet when there are opportunities for like breaking for chicken and they're trying to get the crowd riled, he's
Yeah,
just as much
that I
into
saw.
it there. Um, but even I think I watched the VCast from Spartan Mag, and Paul Conite made the same comment that he also felt that Jeremy was
Okay.
less yapping, as my son would
Okay.
say.
Well, there are people that out there that will be very happy about that. And I'm talking about even some Michigan State fans. But I would just say this, be careful what you wish for, because what you don't want to do, and this has been one of the big concerns about this whole thing, what you don't want to do is have what makes Jeremy special removed, taken
Right.
away from his game because of what that could mean about the overall way that he plays. There are guys, I mean, I'll go way back. Scott Skiles, in my opinion, absolutely was a better player when he felt he had a crowd against him.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. That guy got more abuse. That's the thing. If you think Jeremy, when he goes on the road, I'm sure Jeremy's going to take some booing at Purdue and at Indiana, and certainly, for whoever shows up in Ann Arbor. I don't know if that'll be sold out or not.
Oh, I'm sure
But
that is.
I don't know if it will be. They don't sell games out over there, but unless Michigan State fans do it for them. But anyway, I don't. We have, whatever Jeremy's going to get, it doesn't equate to what Scott Skiles got his senior year. It was off the charts. I shouldn't say never. I guess Grayson Allen might have gotten it at a similar level, but very few players have I ever seen get treated the way Scott Skiles got treated. And it just seemed to inspire him. He loved
It was always a
thrived
mistake.
on it.
Yeah.
I don't know about Jeremy Fears, but I'm just saying some guys need that to be at their best. And you got to be careful with it. And I implicitly trust Tom Izzo on that front because I'm positive he's a guy who fully understands and believes in the value of emotion. It's an anti-analytics concept. That doesn't mean it's not true. There are guys absolutely for whom playing with emotion makes them better. And so that's my only concern. If that's true, if that's a real thing that Jeremy's kind of toning it down, is can he successfully be the same guy that he's been all year while doing that? That's my only hesitation with it. If he can, great. But, I like Jeremy the way he's been.
Yeah.
take it for myself. It doesn't mean I liked what he did at Minnesota. That was, that was a foolish move. But I want the Jeremy that we've seen all year. So I guess we'll find out how all that shakes out the rest of the way, and whether it really has resulted in a change in him and how well he's able to playing that way, or whether it was just a brief blip and he gets back to being the guy he's been in terms of being demonstrative.
I think it's been strategic, and only in the sense that I think he's recognized that the situation and sort of the hullabaloo that was going on, you kind of let that thing dies off because there are 20 more outrageous things that happen. Mick Cronin, all those, other things going on.
Oh yeah.
And people get distracted by it. You can just kind of stand to the radar for a little bit, and then you can sort of pick things back up. So we'll see. As you
Very
said,
true.
We'll see.
Very true. The spotlight goes elsewhere in a New York minute. I mean, there's just no question about that. And so if there are no more incidents, but that's the problem. The problem is, even if there's something that happens that on balance really isn't his fault, but it just kind of looks questionable, it's going to come back. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So
maybe
we'll just have to see how it unfolds.
Yeah.
I
think it's going to more depend on what happens, aside from like dumb things like Minnesota. It's going to depend more on what happens during the Michigan game, because I know there'll be the Zapruder, like as you mentioned, analysis
Every
of all the fouls and hand grabs and whatever,
and slow motion and all the. Oh yeah.
There'll be plenty of that. All right, well, we'll get out of here, and we'll be live after the game. And fortunately, blessedly, it'll be an earlier game because it's a CBS 1:00 game. So we'll be going around 4:30 or so, I imagine, Sunday afternoon. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.